Good morning, America. Thank you for watching Taxes Made Easy here on the smartmoneyculture.tv. So, got a very interesting show. A lot of news that came out over the weekend, and Boeing is having more troubles. We have political moves, good or bad, by both Biden and Trump campaigns. But I really want to take a deeper dive into some of the attitudes affecting our government and good public policy and how that affects our wallets and our ability to make money and pay for our everyday expenses. Because as we know, things are tough out there. So stay tuned and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for watching live or on rebroadcast. And I want to jump right in here. Kind of scary, a couple scary articles about Boeing, and I don't like picking on Boeing. It's just been in the news so much that again another incident just happened. I'm going to get to that in just a second. So Boeing is now have the FAA investigating counterfeit titanium being used in their products. Now, did Boeing and Airbus, Spirit Airbus, know about it? Probably not. But again, some of the titanium was used false or incorrect authenticity records. And where did this titanium come from? Well, from Italy, Turkey, and originally China. So China has really cornered the market on a lot of rare metals, and lo and behold, now they're faking some of it and not authenticating it correctly. So the metal was tested, passed some of the tests, failed some of the tests, and so Boeing reported a voluntary disclosure to the FAA saying, "Hey, we've got some issues here. We need to get this corrected." And they're saying that the suspect parts were quarantined and removed from Spirit production. But again, this pretty much claims that look, they took care of it. But at the same time, you're still having more issues with Boeing jets. So when you have one issue, and people can just say, okay, that's kind of a one-off. But here, Boeing is having multiple issues, multiple problems with their jets. It's become a bigger and bigger problem with quality control. Again, there's been a lot of accusations that DEI focusing on not on delivering the best product, but hiring people based on diversity and inclusivity instead of focusing on just the economics of it, has really caused this company to deteriorate. And it's a great American company with a huge history. So again, it's really sad to see this. So again, another investigation. Southwest Airlines Boeing jet did what's called a Dutch roll. I had never heard of this before, but apparently it's where there's always some flex when you're flying in the air. A plane is not one piece of machinery. I mean, it has to have some flex with it, the bigger it is. But this one had just going from Phoenix to Oakland had a bad enough issue where the nose of the plane might go right to left as this airplane banks to one side. So it just kind of caused the plane to twist a bit, and it caused substantial damage to the aircraft, which is pretty scary. Again, it had 175 passengers and crew on board when it happened, and this just happened on May 25th, so just under a month ago. So again, they're investigating, seeing how is this happening, what's going on. It kind of explains what a Dutch roll is, but I think the bigger takeaway is every time Boeing has another issue, it erodes trust, not only in flying, but also in Boeing. And that's not good for our economy. We want to be able to rely on an excellent products from American companies that have been around forever. So, not forever, but anyway, again, Boeing has been huge and very instrumental in plane manufacturing over the last 60, 70 years. Now, jumping to the next article, this is a bit of politics, and I think it's kind of funny. Trump came out with this new big thing saying, hey, no taxes on tips. Who typically benefits from tips? Lower income to middle income workers. These are people that, some people are making really good money on tips. I spoke to a waiter that was making $90,000, but he worked his butt off for it. And he'd been there over 6 years at the restaurant where he worked at. He was working hard. Taxing those tips absolutely hurts people that have the least amount of money. Now, on one hand, should they be paying equivalent wages to other people? Maybe. And this could be seen as just a cheap political way for Trump to score some major political points in, especially Nevada, that has a high tourism economy, with Las Vegas. So what he's encouraged people is to write on receipts, vote Trump, and to eliminate taxes. So they have some examples down here of different pro-Trump celebrities that have written on there. It's a nice big fat tip. A vote for Trump is a vote for no tax on tips. So again, I think it's a little funny. He's turned this into kind of a grassroots campaign. But is it good to stop taxing tips? I think it would help the people that are working hard, doing a great job the most. And I think that would largely benefit the poor people in our economy. So jumping to another way to help the poorest, lower to middle income, the Biden administration, back in May, announced $5.5 billion in grants. Now, this is directly from the Housing and Urban Development website. So, went straight to the source here, and this is something that we talked about. $5.5 billion in funding, go to 1,200 communities through 2,400 grants. Now, part of this, they talk about homeownership is an essential part of the American dream. One of the concerns here is, why are they doing this now towards the end of their presidency? Again, it's $3.3 billion for block grants to build affordable housing, $455 million connect people with HIV/AIDS to housing and support, addressing homelessness. One of the things that was on another site is that they are, and this is back in March, they announced that they're going to provide tax breaks for new homeowners. They're going to provide $5,000 credit over 2 years to help people just now getting into a home, and also encourage people to, they have another program to to help people take out HELOCs and access to equity in their home. So the big concern here is, this comes from Hot Air, which is a right-leaning site. The housing scheme could ignite another 2008 mortgage crisis. It seems like we don't learn from the past. We just tend to repeat our mistakes whenever it is politically advantageous in the moment. Now, George Bush was the president back in when the 2008 mortgage crisis happened. And it was, the banks running amok, making horrible deals. And there are people on both sides of the political aisle. Well, you had a lot of Republicans saying, hey, we need to bail out these banks. We need to bail out these banks. I'm not sure that was the best idea, because the banks didn't learn. They just continued their normal baloney. So why are they saying this? because when you make housing more affordable, there's a couple ways to do it. Increase the supply of housing, which is part of these grant programs, but they're targeting minorities, urban areas, people with AIDS. I mean, it's not generally available to the public, but it's also targeting first-time home buyers, trying to make it more affordable. Adding more money to the situation does not fix much. And actually, it makes it harder and usually drives up the prices of homes. So when you have government programs that give people more money, that's just more people entering the market, trying to buy a home right now when we have fewer homes available than ever. So it sounds good, it feels good. Is it actually helpful? And that's really kind of the problem here is you have two main ways to approach things. Get the government out of the way and put more hands on the people to actually get out there and build the economy and grow the economy with their own economic decisions. Or does the government come in, put their fingers on one end of the scale to help one group against other groups? So anytime you're helping one group, you're giving them more money, which is driving the cost of housing for everybody. Housing prices continue to shoot up. That's not how you lower the price of housing. That's how you increase it. So he's saying that we did the same thing, the subprime mortgage crisis, where people were getting very cheap loans. We threw out all kinds of money, and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac pretty much managed the entire mortgage industry. The government insured, and again, providing more and more loans to risky borrowers is a great recipe for a lot of defaults. Again, just repeating the same thing that we did in 2008. The biggest taxpayer ballots weren't to Wall Street, but to Fannie and Freddie, and this is socialism at its finest. The government pretty much controls the mortgage industry through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. The vast majority of mortgages throughout the entire country go through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac that are essentially government controlled. They're government financed. They're quasi-government organizations. And then one of the big issues that they have are these home equity loans. Again, this is encouraging people to borrow more money from their home, which is their biggest asset. Why would we want people to take their biggest asset and put it up for loans when interest rates are higher than ever? So I'm going to get right back. We're hitting a break right now, and we'll continue. Hubert Johnson here. Thank you again for watching. And just continuing on with this article from Hot Air. This is a huge thing. Right now, with interest rates high, the last thing you want to do is add more debt to your home, to your families. It hurts you. Whereas if you take a home equity loan out and you go spend that money now, while it hurts you long term, who does it really help? And again, saying the Biden administration wants to encourage Americans to borrow even more at a time. Credit card auto debts that are an all-time high. If home values fall in value, which very well could happen, then you right back in the subprime crisis where people lose homes, foreclosures happen. And this is from the Wall Street Journal. The likely losers would be taxpayers. Not only more bailouts, but the people actually losing their homes have to kind of restart financially. It's a lose-lose situation. If you take the money out, it can hurt you. If we put more and more people that can't really afford today's home prices, using little incentives and gimmicks to try to make them feel like they can buy a home, it's just doing the same thing that was done before. Pushing for more and more people to purchase homes, thinking, oh, home prices will go up forever. They don't go up forever. There are market corrections. Life happens, and there's been so many government distortions in the housing market that things could really change and change quickly. And not trying to be pro-Trump or against Trump, but if he gets elected, one of the big concerns here is immigration. And not only is he talking about closing the borders, but a lot of people self-immigrated or emigrated the last time he was elected. He actually enforced our immigration laws, for better or worse. But if we have a large exodus of people from the housing market, you could see not only home values drop down and become affordable again, but that people that are over leveraged are going to be right back in the same situation where it might be cheaper to walk away from homes rather than continue really expensive mortgages that, again, long term, are very ruinous to many people. So again, things are not, the more volatility you have in the market, the more it hurts average Americans. So, and by taking out home equity loans, you have less home ownership, less value and equity built up in a family. So again, it doesn't, and the article goes on and saying, who wants to do this? What's the purpose of this? Throw cheap money out right before the election. And these just aren't first-time home buyers. Fannie and Freddie are now insuring $1 million homes. Most first-time buyers are not buying $1 million homes. This is just another way to encourage taxpayers to go out and buy more and more expensive homes. There's been more demand for $1 million homes as prices have gone up and up. But again, this is more exposure to the government, to the taxpayers, and again, more debt is not what we need, especially with all the high interest rates right now. We need less debt. And they have this line, it's kind of a stinger. There must be a cheaper way to buy an election. Speaking of that, President Biden again announced that they're going to use the oil reserves again. So this just came out this morning, 5:29 a.m. So last month, right before Memorial Day, they announced that they were going to take the strategic oil reserves and sell a bunch of oil from it. Now they're doing so again through the summer before the election. The problem with this is it's short-sighted. It's what's going to help the economy right here, right now, move gas prices a little bit right here, right now. But it does absolutely nothing to solve long-term issues and puts us in a more precarious situation should real emergencies happen. If we really need that strategic oil reserve, it's less than ever. I think I read one day that we were down to just a few weeks supply. 3 to 4 weeks of supply in the SPR, or Strategic Energy Reserve. So again, the advice is suggested gas prices are still too high, and they're going to take action to cut them down a little bit further. So this is the government coming in and artificially putting the finger on the prices to get prices to be lower by increasing supply. But they have so many other ways to increase supply that leads to long-term production that will actually bring down prices long-term. And they're not taking any of those. This is just a short-term band-aid that makes the economy look a little bit better in the short term, but long term, gas prices are going to go right back up as soon as they stop pumping more gas from the strategic reserves. So it just, am I enjoying a little bit lower gas prices right now? Absolutely. But knowing why is important so that we just don't fall for short-term gimmicks, and we can understand that long-term this isn't going to help. This is only going to continue everything as usual. And it's extremely cynical for politicians to do this just before an election, make people feel like things are going better, and then, I got elected and prices go right back up. So again, it was done between Memorial Day and July 4th. And this is when gas prices are usually the highest through the summer. And then Biden has used more oil from the country's reserves than any other president before him. And we haven't been at war. We haven't been at war. We haven't used it for military purposes. We haven't used it for natural disasters. We've just sold more of our country's reserves at this time for political purposes, which is just kind of mind-boggling. So this is an interesting, a little on the lighter side. I thought this was funny, a little weird, in my opinion. I get where some people look at this and going, huh? And then this is from the Washington Examiner. And again, this is coming from a very right-leaning perspective. So Chick-fil-A came up with this idea. Let's do a little summer camp for kids if they want to, it's a little bit of daycare, but, introduce them to Chick-fil-A, how restaurants run, and it is it's not something I would just say, yay, let's do this. So you get, and this is over the weekend again. So what's happening is Chick-fil-A has this a job, summer program. You choose from 3 sessions. It's ideally for kids 5 to 12. You have to pay for your kids to do this, but they get a kids meal T-shirt, a name tag, how cute, and a snack. Activities for kids: learn dining room host and customer service skills, learn how to take a guest order, learn how to bag a guest order, tour the kitchen and box your own nuggets, make your own ice dream cone or cup. I didn't even know they did that. How to be a Chick-fil-A cow mascot. So I'm laughing about this, but rightly so. Well, I understand where people are coming. They're saying capitalism is a like disease. They're bringing back child labor. Introduce your kids to late-stage capitalism. Essentially, it's training kids to be introducing them to a world of working in fast food. Is it the worst thing in the world? No. Are parents doing this? Yeah. These programs are selling out like that. And it's something for their kids to do over the summer. So the author of the article thinks this is great. This is wonderful. Someone says, my 13-year-old has two dreams right now: work in agriculture and operate a farm. That's pretty cool. Oops. And it's number one. Keep clicking on it, sorry. Get a job at Chick-fil-A as soon as possible. Well, due to minimum wage increases and other problems, she probably won't be able to get a job at minimum Chick-fil-A till he or she is 16 at the soonest. So you got to wait I guess 3 years. But teaching people, these aren't horrible skills for someone to learn. Do the new generations need to learn these skills and learn how to interact with people and deal with rude customers and deal with, how to take an order and get it right? Yeah. So this is nothing new. Maybe this capitalism has it at its worst, but when I coached baseball, and I was in Mesa at the time, and the Diamondbacks team, Arizona Diamondbacks, they were absolutely influenced a whole generation of kids to be Diamondback fans. Because in most leagues, the manager or coach will pick which team they want, and they'll, in the draft they'll go through and get the order of the draft, but then you'll do reverse order. You get to pick your team or something like that. But in Arizona, what they did is everybody were Diamondbacks. And each team were the gold Diamondbacks or the camouflage Diamondbacks or the black Diamondbacks or the white and purple. Every team had a different version of the Diamondbacks jersey. But they were all Diamondbacks, which is kind of weird. But the cool thing about it is that the Diamondbacks had this partnership with all the little leagues. So they give them free jerseys, but then all the kids are running around in Diamondbacks. So you're creating a whole new generation of fans and kids that become familiar with the Diamondback team over any other MLB team. And other teams do it too, and I think that's amazing. It helps the little leagues keep costs down, helps kids be active, but this is capitalism influencing kids. Similar age, 5 to 12. Do I want my 5-year-old or 6-year-old going and learning how to be a fast food employee? It's probably not something I would do, but it is a bad thing to do. Is it bad for people to do? And really, again, it says these programs are selling out faster than ever. And one mom said that her daughter was so excited that she woke up early to get ready. And they only signed up because her niece had done it the year before and loved it. So this the author of the article is saying the outrage is incredibly dumb. I can see where people would be a little annoyed by this and think this is weird. This isn't something they would do. It's definitely not child labor. I think it's cute, if anything. But at the same time, we need to teach people to function in society much better. We need to teach our younger generation how to talk to people. I have a 13-year-old, and he's planning to start working in the fall. And he's going to be working refereeing soccer. Now, at first, he's just going to be the guy on the sidelines for the first couple of years. But again, you have parents, you have coaches that yell and say stupid things to sideline refs. I've refereed myself, 11, 12 years now. Coached longer than that. And the stupid things I've seen parents do. But again, could fill books. The interesting part, though, is how it affects kids. I've seen young girls, 14, 15-year-old, one girl came out and she was refereeing after taking a year break because in her first game, someone was an idiot, upset her, and she's like, I don't need to deal with this. Came back after a year, and thank goodness we had a nice, easy game. Both coaches were very good. I was a center ref for it, and I just talked to both coaches. Hey, we've got a new ref. We're not going to be yelling, and they both were very good. The next game, my own son centered. He was 17 at the time, and he had to eject one coach and another parent, one of the parents got in his face after the game, yelling at him. And the sad thing was that his son was at his side saying, "Dad, please stop. Dad, please stop." The son was embarrassed because his dad was acting like a child. I do think kids need to get out there, learn good habits. They need to work. I think it's great for them to learn to work and actually learn the value of money and start saving young. The fact that we have people leaving high school without ever having worked a real job, I think that's a tragedy. They don't know anything about, they don't know much about real life. And I think teaching children about this, about how money actually works at a young age. You know, you can support whatever you want, but having kids should have a bank account. They should start learning finances, investing. My 13-year-old, he wants to save 75% of everything he makes when he starts working and then only spend 15%. You know, he wants to give 10% to the church as a tithing, but only spend 15% of his money, 75% to savings. We've only asked our other kids to save 50%, and the other part, give 10% to church, the other 40% go blow, go have fun, whatever. But he wants to do even better. These are the things that are not taught in schools, that are not taught, financial planning, management, how to manage a bank account, how to save, invest for the future. We're not teaching this at all. And I think what people don't know about capitalism can be very alarming. So they did a survey, capitalism, true, false, whatever, with a bunch of questions. And they did this, the world's largest survey on capitalism in 34 countries. They presented 18 different statements on capitalism. And which ones are ranked true or false. So they're looking at each statement and just rating it true or false. The idea that capitalism has improved the situation of ordinary people in many countries made in the top 5 in just 2 out of 34 countries. Vietnam and Nigeria. Very interesting. So why would they rate it higher in Vietnam than in the United States? So Vietnam, if you don't know, it's a communist country still. But Vietnam, like China, their economies have exploded due to free market reforms. And while in the economic freedom index, they're still much lower than the United States. They have made huge strides. So Nigeria, people associate capitalism with hope of eradicating poverty and a better life. So, and it doesn't go into the breakdown. I mean, if you want, you can go to the survey, but this is just kind of an interesting view. And Germany had the fewest respondents agree with that than any other country. And more than any of the other 18 statements on capitalism, said that one was the most false out of all of them. Capitalism responsible for hunger and poverty received 3 times more support. So if you go to Uganda, the statement capitalism responsible for hunger and poverty received the least support out of all the 18 statements. So Germany, where they have a very prosperous country, it's been capitalist for decades. You could argue, well, you had the whole Nazi thing. But it has a history of capitalism. Again, viewed very poorly, whereas in Uganda, they see this help. So again, in the United States, capitalism has improved the situation of ordinary people, only supported by 27% of respondents. So why is this? Oh, and we're at another break, so we're going to come back to us. Welcome back, everybody, and thank you for sticking with us. I think this is very, very interesting when we look at recent examples of people changing their policies and seeing huge improvements in their economies. So, why in the world in communist Vietnam would they support the idea that capitalism has improved the situation for ordinary people? It's because they've had very good experiences with market economy reforms. Their government is still communist. Do they still have all the freedoms that we do? No. But the improvement that they've suggested for market reforms has exploded their economy, just like in China. Problem is it responsible capitalism, or is it like in China, there's huge environmental disasters caused by it, mainly pushed by the government. I think Vietnam overall has done a better job. The Communist Party in Vietnam kind of walks to its own drum, but they by opening things up, they started off, they made huge advances. So in 1990, they had a gross domestic GDP of $98 per person per year. It was the poorest country in the world, behind Somalia and Sierra Leone. So every bad harvest in Vietnam led to hunger and starvation. Vietnam relied on the UN's World Food Program every time, as well as financial assistance from the Soviet Union and other Eastern Bloc countries, other communist countries. So in 1993, almost 80% of the population was living in poverty. 13 years later, 2006, that number had fallen to 50.6%, and in 2020, so 27 years later, only 5%. That doesn't happen by accident. What changed? They again, before market reforms, they were unable to produce enough rice to feed its own population. Now it's one of the world's largest rice exporters, and also a major electronics exporter. So it's not just food that they're exporting, but they're exporting other things. And it's not, and again, when you look at things and where they're produced, a lot of stuff is produced in China still, but more and more I'm seeing stuff produced in Vietnam. And it's climbing. We talked about the index of economic freedom the other day. Vietnam is the top climber in the index, which the Heritage Foundation had been publishing since '95. So again, it talks a little bit about this. So it's now 59th out of 176 countries. But it climbed 13 places just last year, where it was 72nd. So it's jumped 21 scores more than any other country, similar sized country, while the United States has lost 6 points over the same period. It ranks 11th out of the entire Asia Pacific region. It still has a long ways to go. Government freedom is a huge part of that. But again, the country, when you drop from 80% poverty to 5% poverty by getting the government out of the economy, you let people go out and run their own businesses and create their own future, that is a miracle. Well, it's not a miracle, but it's what happens when you get socialism out of an economy and you allow people to be creative and flourish. Uganda, one of the poorest countries in the world still, real GDP grew by only 1% each year between 2011 and 2022, over 11 years. Nobody's lost as many economic points as Uganda. They went from a 62.9 points on it, and again, it's lost 11 points on it, down to 50.7. One of the biggest things, property rights are not being respected. When you can't depend on relying on investing, building a home, building a business, and being able to keep your assets and keep what you've worked for, it takes away the incentive to build, to invest, to plan. And again, it just kills an economy. But you go to other areas, China, Vietnam, South Korea, India, Poland, Czech Republic, and the former GDR, so what used to be Eastern Germany, you see huge improvements in the ordinary lives of people. Now, I do want to touch on one of the comments here. It said, the 3 times as many people in Germany felt like capitalism is responsible for hunger. Wherever you see hunger, it's almost never because there's a shortage of food. There's almost always a surplus of food because there's so many countries exporting food across the world. What there's a shortage of is freedom. So every time you have mass starvation, you have genocide going on. It's happening right now again in the Sudan, and nobody's talking about it. It's not on the news. It's because the government is controlling the amount of food that gets to a region. It's because there's warlords, there's again, military forces that are using food and supplies to control people and to punish people that don't agree with them. That's the number one cause of world hunger across the world. So it's poverty, people not being able to purchase the food that's readily available, and or the military situations. And again, military situations are a lot more common. But lifting people out of poverty is the best way to improve world hunger, to improve the lives of individuals. And so since you've had one last fact here, since capitalism has taken off, the number of people living in extreme poverty has fallen from 90% to less than 9% globally. It's a huge thing, but again, we have short memories. We have very short memories, and I'm going to share another tab. We don't remember, the difference between socialist and capitalist economies. This is from Investopedia. Just kind of lays it out. Capitalism, socialism are both ways to manage economic resources. Capitalism is individual initiative and favors market mechanisms. And then socialism is the other side. It favors government intervention, planning, and limitations on private control of resources. Most economies are a mix. We're definitely a mix here in the United States. But the question is, it's a political question. How much socialism do we want, and does it actually end up hurting people? So again, this is just a straight definition here. But there's an interesting article. This is from the original source is from a New York Times. And the title is, "What Have We Liberals Done to the West Coast?" So this is, again, coming from townhall.com. I couldn't pull up the original article. But Nicholas Kristof is writing this and doing some introspection here about the failures of liberalism, especially on the West Coast. And he's from Oregon. And one of the biggest concerns with Oregon, especially when you go to Portland, you cannot rely on the rule of law. If you are a conservative and you voice your opinion, you will get shut down. You can get mobbed. We've had reporters get beat up, noses broken, put in the hospital, and then the criminal justice system does almost nothing about it. So the disparity in the enforcement of law is a huge drag on economic productivity. The homeless issue has become such a huge problem that people that own homes, and this really talks about being able to, the property rights, being able to invest and plan for your future, for the overall growth and prosperity of your family can't work if you have the government allowing crime to just run rampant. There's been plenty of articles, and I've actually shared some of them in the past, where you have people squatting on sidewalks throughout suburbia. And you have all these people that invested, purchased homes, they're paying mortgages, they're doing everything right. And now their kids can't even go out on the street because there's homeless people with, and I just hate homeless people, but when they're allowed to destroy the properties and infringe on other people's rights, that's where it's a problem. So we should have real programs to help people get off of drugs, get off of the streets, instead of flood other areas. And again, there's huge problems with drug use. Kids can't walk down the streets without needles in California or in San Francisco. They are dodging poop, human feces all over the place, which is a huge mess. That's horrible for the environment too. So these policies unchecked are horrible for the environment. They're horrible for the economy, and people can't sell. They either have to walk away from the home to get their kids to safer areas and just move away from Portland, or nobody wants to buy homes in those areas, or they have to sit there and stick it out and deal with these issues and the politics where they won't listen to them. They're considered suburbia and they're ignored. So this guy is from Oregon, and he talks a lot about, he loves the West, but what has happened to the West Coast? And he points out that this idea that housing is a human right, and they believe that a lot more than conservatives in Florida or Texas, but less likely to actually get people housed. So this is where you don't use the market to make people make their own decisions, but you have government getting there and messing with things, and again, driving people out of their homes rather than taking care of the homeless situation. You end up with more people on the streets, and you end up with less people actually able to afford a home. So he said, we accept a yawning gulf between our values, stating that housing is a human right, and actual outcomes, people being housed and experiencing the American dream of being able to build the equity in their own home and property. And he claims it's not liberalism, it's West Coast liberalism, because he's in his mind, liberalism in New York and on the West Coast is better than the West Coast, and he goes through the reasons, but he says the highest rate of unsheltered homelessness are in California and Oregon. And he said the three states with the lowest rates are Vermont, New York, and Maine. Don't agree with his numbers here, but he's claiming liberal Massachusetts has some of the finest public schools in the country. They spend the most on public schools. They don't have the best results. So liberal Washington and Oregon have below average high school graduation rates. And then Oregon ranks dead last for youth mental health services. Incoming DC and Delaware rank the best. So, and he goes into this, but again, I think what I really want to highlight, and he even takes a shot at some of these trans issues, he's instead of putting more money into schools, politics is always part theater, but too often it's performative rather than substantive. So instead of Oregon took money from a tight education budget to put tampons in boys' restrooms in elementary schools, including in kindergartens. So where there's absolutely no use for it. And so again, he goes in, he dives deeper into it, but this is where I think we do our people a disservice when we focus not on the results, not on actually truly helping people, but we focus on the politics. What dream do we want to have, and how can we enforce that? How can we make our ideals dominant rather than let people legislate and discover what works for them and what doesn't work. Oregon decriminalized most drugs. They found out that doesn't work. They'd only increase the homelessness, increase crime, increase all kinds of problems, suicide, and made things a lot worse. So they're reversing course and they're criminalizing most drug offenses again, to the cheer of most Oregon people in Oregon. The main point here is when we're looking at tax policy, when we're looking at policies that help, and again, this is the whole point, capitalism can work. Capitalism and understanding finances can improve your situation and the lives of your family. And this matters a lot to me because when I talk to people, I sat down with someone just last week and they said, what's the number one thing we can do? I looked at it and I said, look, I can't help you because you already have a plan. You just need to reestablish your payment plan because it's going to default. But there's not a whole lot I can do for you. And I'm not going to sell you the sun, moon, and the stars when I can't. I told them budget. Know where your money's going. Number one, pay off high interest debt. Take wise financial steps for their future. And these aren't young people. These are people in their 50s. And part of what we do is we educate people so they can have successful financial success long run. And that improves our country and your lives. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.